The outlook for the Miami Hurricanes in 2025 is fascinating. They get the transfer in Carson Beck, who before the 2024 season was touted as the Heisman favorite and the favorite to be the number one pick in the 2025 NFL draft. That doesn't happen. Beck has an up and down year. They win the SEC at Georgia, but he hurts the UCL. Now, Carson Beck is with the Miami Hurricanes. Of course, they had the Heisman Trophy finalist in Cam Ward, the first overall pick in the NFL draft in 2025. Xavier Restrepo ends up being an undrafted player, so they lose a lot of production on the outside, and of course their quarterback. But getting Carson Beck is the ultimate. If this guy performs to his level, then Miami can be, even in some conversations, a national title contender, of course, an ACC title contender. Now, this is the 2025 preview and predictions for the Hurricane season this year under Mario Cristobal. All evidence points to them having a ranked year in the top 15. Once again, not having a blow up at the end of last year like they had in losing to Georgia Tech and losing to Syracuse, because if you don't lose in one of those two matchups, find yourself in the ACC champ game. They won't hurt you for losing that. If they would have lost to Clemson, let's say, and in the college football playoff, and proving to be a tough out. Josiah Trader on the outside for them. He is a weapon and a piece to know if you don't already know him quite well. If you heard the name Jeremiah Smith, well, one of his most talented teammates was Josiah Trader at Shamadan Madonna, winning state championships. Also out there is CJ Daniels, the transfer, and Ray Joseph. But where I am fascinated with Miami is they ran the heck out of the football last year. Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle were combining for over 6 yards a carry. It's just that most games Miami didn't have to run the ball all that much, and it was Cam Ward throwing the ball over the place, or games like Virginia Tech set up to be like, we just have to throw the ball a whole bunch. Or games against Berkeley, we're down by 18 in the second half, have to lean on the right arm of Cam Ward. We can't just hand the ball off. But next year, the balance with that offense for Mario Cristobal. Let's go through it. They start off the year with a massive showdown. This is that Sunday game at home against Notre Dame. They have a vertical passing attack you don't expect to see at Notre Dame, but with CJ Carr now, a homegrown talent, they have faith in him. Didn't go to outside to try and dip in somewhere else. I got a win at home against Notre Dame, 24-23. They do lean on the running abilities of Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. Also, Ruben Bain, he had a phenomenal 2023 season. 2024, the production wasn't as what it was in 2023, which was crazy. Like 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss last year, dipped a little bit, but still many people, including myself, as a top 30 prospect and as a first round pick possibility in the 2026 NFL draft. Week 2, week 3 have easy home wins again, 27-13, and then South Florida at home starting the season. They got their first 4 home games against Notre Dame, against South Florida, and then Florida. Now, they get to see very stiff competition in the Florida Gators now, with DJ Lagway just taking over there. There's Tyreek Sapp on that defensive line, who's going to be a whole lot of trouble getting after the new quarterback for Miami in Carson Beck. It depends still. Like, where's the health of that UCL for Carson Beck? They could have been and were, because of the first round bye, a favorite at that point to lose to Notre Dame, because there was no ability to push the football down the field. That's why they went out and got Zachariah Branch in Georgia. Dylan Bell, they had the most drops in football. People are assuming that Carson Beck had a horrible season. Just watch the second half against Alabama and tell me he had a horrible year. Georgia won the SEC last year in a down year, with the defense not being close to what it previously had been, even with 2 first-round picks from the defense on the D-line and Malachi Starks. Michael Williams, Jalen Walker all get drafted in the first round on that defense for Georgia, and still yet they didn't have a phenomenal season on defense. Even had Smile London later on get drafted. Against Florida, it's just DJ Lagway. There will be games in 2025 where he takes over and has the ability. What is Miami's secondary going to look like next year? They really went so heavy in the portal, bringing in guys like Charles Brantley or Xavier Lucas, Zachariah Poyser, Jacoby Thomas in that back end. A lot of or I'll say a lack of specifically, of continuity within that team of guys coming back together and having experience all playing together. We know, of course, up front with Akeem Nesidor, Ahmad Moten Sr., that they will have a good defensive line. Miami, you could probably predict as a top 10, 12 defensive line. They'll be getting pressure on DJ Lagway, and it's just going to be up to their defense to stop him. But a loss 21-30, which doesn't hurt you, but you do have to beat either Notre Dame or Florida, one of those two. You cannot drop both of those matchups. Coming out of the bye week, 3-1 at Florida State. Now, it's interesting where the schedule shakes up with that, and having the game Florida State and then a bye week, a whole lot of games to be played towards the end of the season, but a win at Florida State where we really see, again, them leaning on the run game. That's what will help Carson Beck the most. Isn't Josiah Trader turning into Jeremiah Smith. No one's expecting that to happen. You can easily see 810 yards, 7 touchdowns coming out of JoJo Trader and Ray Joseph, CJ Daniels combining for maybe 1,200 yards between those players, with maybe 10, 11 touchdowns combined. Like, Carson Beck's numbers don't have to be 30 touchdowns and 3,500 yards. It's fine if he throws touchdowns in the low 20s, just as long as maybe the interceptions you can count on one hand, or around 6 or 7 mark, keeping that quarterback touchdown to interception ratio around 3-4 to 1. But Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle leaning on them against Florida State to beat them. Then you've got the bye and Miller, Moss, and Louisville to play. At that point in the season, right, of course, you had the good start, 3-1. You're 4-1 on the year. But for Louisville, of course, it presents a challenge playing Louisville, but a win there, 5-1. Then Stanford moving them to 6-1 on the year. Looking at the rest of the stretch, it's like, holy cow, we can do it once again. And you do not want to overlook any team, but at SMU, I do have a loss, 30-26, which pushes them to 6-2 on the season before they have that final stretch. Like, you can go 10-2 next year within that conference. You can go 10-2 and make the college football playoff, just as long as you have like one of those losses coming outside of the ACC. Within the conference, really like one loss next year is where you have to see Miami be, because the SEC is so strong and so deep that you see the potential of teams getting in there with 9-3 next year. When last year that wasn't happening for South Carolina and Alabama because of you had SMU and the winner was going to go in Clemson getting there. Syracuse the week after SMU. You know, Kevin Jennings for SMU, a lot of people are so swayed on that. This performance in the college football playoff. Penn State was just another caliber of roster. That's like having a varsity team play their second stringer. It's not like varsity versus JV type of this is not even fair, but just they have better players on all sides. O-line, defensive line, Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton. They just made it a horrific day performance out there for Jennings. But the rest of the way, had them running the table. Syracuse with the win. NC State, the Wolfpack with the win. At Virginia Tech against the Hokies, a win. And then at Pittsburgh, 38-20, had them winning that matchup. Going down the stretch, back against the wall the rest of the way. We know a game against Syracuse is going to have so many fans of Miami nervous, just because that was the team that sent you home last year. One of the more heartbreaking losses last season, you had Miami at 6th in the country and then drop all the way out of the college football playoff race. It was all there. Just I believe 9-0 before the loss to Georgia Tech happened. But not playing Georgia Tech, not playing Clemson are so massive, and why you cannot lose more than 2 games, cannot lose more than 1 game in the conference, because Georgia Tech and Clemson play each other. One of those teams is guaranteed to have an in-conference loss, but not obviously guaranteed to have another loss within the conference. You can't have 2. My prediction, specifically the 8 teams that are played within the ACC, is Clemson, Miami, and Georgia Tech are all sitting there at 7-1. That Georgia Tech has a loss to Clemson And actually, I have got them with a loss to NC State as well. So they would wind up being 6-2. Miami and Clemson 7-1 overall in the conference. And then we talked about that Miami lost to Florida in the year. And then it's a Clemson, Miami, 11-1, 10-2 matchup, both in the CFP. But as far as the seeding goes, it would be way better if you could get a home game at Hard Rock Stadium there in Miami and not having to go on the road to Outson and play Oregon, to Beaver Stadium and play Penn State, to have to go to Bryant-Denny and play Bama, or have to go to Stanford and play Georgia, or if the Buckeyes are a 5 or a 6, having to play them at the shoe. There are a number of tough games, like Notre Dame, who you played early in the year at home. What if you go to South Bend, Indiana, and have to play them on the road after that team with Jeremiah Love has really just built in together? That game week 1 has so much weight to it. Like, if you lose to Notre Dame at home to start the year, then your matchups like with Florida later on just adds a little bit more weight to it, because you can only like lose one more game the rest of the year, and it just puts an immense amount of pressure. So week 1, it gets started right away. CJ Carr, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price with another great backfield. But remember, Miami now, this is the backfield. I'm going to keep pressing it. Jordan Lyle and Mark Fletcher. Jordan Lyle had like 7 yards a carry last year for something like 60 carries. People were calling for him early on to even get more carries, more touches of the ball. And then Mark Fletcher, 9 rushing touchdowns on like 110, 120 carries on the season a year ago, getting them the football, taking the load off of Carson Beck and easing into it for him to get the ball to his playmakers. A very talented Miami roster, a very good coach in Mario Cristobal. This ain't the team anymore that's just going to run the ball when you've got... when you're up and there's no timeouts for Georgia Tech, and that has to happen. But 2 or 3 teams, in my opinion, coming out of the ACC this year, top heavy with Georgia Tech, Miami, and Clemson. Please let me know, though, what you think about Miami, and you see them the same way that I do. I like Carson Beck to be a top 8 quarterback in college football next year. Experience is something that you can't equate to. He's the only guy besides there's Cade Klubnik. There is, of course, Drew Allert played in a Big Ten champ game last year. Sam Levitt. You have each of like those powers. Arch Manning played like a snap in the SEC champ game. But the SEC is built of guys with inexperience. Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck at the top of the ACC provide that experience. And then Sam Levitt, who's been to a Big 12 champ game in the CFP. Drew Aller, who's been to the CFP semifinals in a Big 10 champ game. But that looks to be like your crop of the best teams in college football. So please let me know in the comments what you think of Miami. I need you to know that if I'm mentioning players, like if Jordan Lyle, unfortunately, or Mark Fletcher weren't to be on the field, I don't know that because I'm recording this a couple of weeks before the start of the season, and especially when you are watching it. I'm recording this over a month before you're watching the video because I'm going to be in Africa at the time that you're watching it, and obviously complications recording in Africa as far as like getting them posted and scheduled. So I apologize if any of the content is outdated and just doesn't make any sense, but didn't have any of that to my knowledge. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment down below whether you agree with all this, and I wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blunder, hi everybody, I'm Josh Blunder.
To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.